Hi, this is Sarah Mikesell with CattleSite, and today we're here with Ruaraidh Petre. He is the Executive Director of the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. Thanks for being with us today, Ruaraidh.
Thanks for having me.
Very good. And Ruaraidh and I are kind of tucked away in the GRSB booth here in San Antonio at the National Cattlemen's Beef Association meeting called CattleCon. And I guess we're going to start with the big question of what's new at GRSB?
Yeah, well, at the end of last year, we produced our first sustainability report. We released that at our global conference in Uruguay. And that sustainability report really gives a baseline and an update on all of the national roundtables' progress towards our global goals.
Right.
So this gives us a sort of a stick in the sand, as it were, as where are we going, where have we come from. And our global goals are pretty important. They're 2030 goals, so clearly we've got a lot of work to do in those few years until 2030. And it's great to see that 9 of the 13 roundtables are already able to point to what they're doing to achieve our goals.
That's incredible. I mean, and this is a long way coming, right?
Yeah, it's been a long time. So we were established in 2012.
Right.
We set up our principles and criteria way back then. And it was really 2021 when we had a sufficient network of roundtables around the world that we could actually set these global goals and say, yeah, if we do that now, we've got an actual chance of meeting them. And this is the first opportunity to say, yeah, we've got commitment around the world, we're actually starting to measure things, and even on some of them, demonstrating progress. So yeah, it's taken a while, but yeah, it's worth it.
Well, and that's the whole goal of this, right, is to show progress.
Yeah. Sustainability is not an end point. It's really just constant progress and making changes as you can and as your environment sort of dictates. So every country that we've got 24 countries involved,
right,
is different.
Yeah.
And they've all got different issues to deal with. And so it is complicated to try and boil that down to 3 goals.
Right.
But we did that in such a way that each of them can report slightly differently on the things that they have prioritized, even though they're contributing to these 3 global goals.
Let's talk about the goals, your
Yeah.
3 global goals. Sorry, that's not easy to say, so I get that.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so the goals are 1 on climate,
Okay.
and that's to reduce the emissions intensity of beef production by 30% by 2030. So pretty ambitious, but intensity means the amount of emission per pound of beef produced. So it's not a total amount of emissions, it's the intensity per pound. And that's effectively a measure of efficiency of production. But the second part of the goal is on a pathway to climate neutrality, because ultimately that's what we need. And we did not set a date for that because it's a big world, it's a big
Right.
industry, and it would not have been realistic for us to say, well, we know we can achieve that by whenever. Some of our country members have. The US has got a goal for 2040. Australia's actually got a 2030 goal. And other countries have got those goals,
Right.
but there are many countries that don't. So we couldn't, with all honesty, say
Right.
we'll manage that by whenever.
Very good.
Second goal, nature positive production. We want to become a net positive contributor to nature by 2030. And that, again, is very different in different countries. So here in the US, you'd be focusing on grazing management, soil health, health of your pastures, etc., making sure that you're getting the best return on your land investment. In some other parts of the world, it might be more to do with deforestation and limiting the amount of deforestation associated with the beef industry. But there are all kinds of ways in which the beef industry supports biodiversity and supports nature, and of course that's what we want to emphasize with our goal. And the final one is on animal health and welfare, and that is to provide animals with a life worth living and make sure that they're well treated throughout their life. That's an ethical imperative for us, but it's also, of course, an efficiency imperative, and it's something that contributes very strongly to sustainability, because if you've got healthy and well looked after animals, they're more productive, and ultimately you need fewer animals to produce the same amount of beef. If you look at the way the US beef industry has evolved over the decades, it has become more and more efficient, and that has meant that the size of the herd has actually decreased, while you have increased the amount of beef produced.
Right. So I have a lot of questions for you, but I will say this. I've attended a couple of the conferences, right? And one of the things that was so amazing to me, right? I'm a Midwestern girl, grew up on a family farming operation, where we get a lot of rain where I grew up, right? And what I was so fascinated about was how different people raise cattle all over the world, right? Because when we started talking about putting goals together for a global group, right? You really have to take a step back and say, oh my gosh, everybody raises cattle different. And you don't think that because you think everybody raises it, I think where you came from, it's like you're the standard, but it's not. Everybody raises beef cattle different, and they have these different climate conditions. I was shocked by, even here in the United States, the guys out west are raising cattle on 2 inches of rain, which was just like crazy to me, right? I mean, it's so different.
Absolutely. And cattle is probably one of the most widespread agricultural operations there is. So you can raise cattle on the edge of the Sahara in Africa. You can raise them on the edge of the Arctic Circle. Up in Norway, in Scotland, we're far north. We're almost on the same line as Juneau, Alaska, and we've got a reasonable sized cattle industry there. We're very wet, but there's other parts of the world which are incredibly dry. So they're all different, and not just the physical environment is different. You've got different disease challenges. You've got different legislative environments. You've got different cultures. So everything is different, and that is why when we set up the Global Roundtable, we recognized right from the beginning that we had to have these national groups to fill in the detail. We could come in at a high level, but you really need people from that country to talk about, well, what are our specific challenges? What can we do to address those challenges? Because even if let's say grazing management was your challenge, the solution to grazing management where you come from in the Midwest is completely different to what it would be in, Arizona, let alone Africa or the outback of Australia.
Right. It's really, it's amazing just to listen to producers talk about how they're raising their herd. I mean, that's and we had people not just from the West, but the most recent conference I was at out in Denver. You guys had people from all over the world talking, and so if people get the chance to go to one of their meetings, and you're in the beef industry, anywhere in the value chain, it's so important in my mind to learn about these other operations and get the full picture of the beef industry. So, and that leads me kind of really to my wrap-up question, because I could talk to you all day, Rory. Is who is your target audience for members of the GRSB?
So our membership is drawn from 6 constituencies. First one is producers, so that's cattle ranchers or farmers, and that's right from individuals up to big organizations like NCBA and Cattle Australia, Canadian Cattle Association. So we've got everything in scale there, from the individual rancher right up to tens of thousands of members. Then we have the processors. So big companies like Cargill, Tyson, JBS, Minerva, Marfrig, these companies are processing the majority of the world's beef. And with the members we have in that constituency, we're already reaching about 2/3 of the cross-border trade in beef. Then we have allied industries. There's loads of those. So those are the companies that provide inputs to the beef industry, and also those who take off products. So the leather industry is there, the dairy industry is there, and all of the input providers, pharmaceutical companies, financiers, etc. Then we have retailers, so the restaurant retailers and some of the supermarket retailers. And we have civil society, which includes NGOs, people like the World Wildlife Fund, Solidaridad, other organizations that are working with producers to be more efficient or more sustainable. And we have, in that same constituency, academia. So some of the land-grant universities are members as well. And they provide that scientific backing that we need to say, okay, what you're actually doing is proven to be better for the environment or better for the cattle, whatever it may be. And the final one is the national roundtables that I referred to before,
Right.
of which we have, well, we got 24 countries, but they're organized into 13 roundtables. Most of them single countries, but some of them, like Europe and Southern Africa, have got, 5 or 6 countries in them.
That's a lot. I mean, you've got a lot of people to manage. That's a lot of different groups, and having a global roundtable, it's not easy for the industry, right? I mean, getting everybody to come together and agree globally on and make decisions, it's got to be tough.
It is tough, but I think with the headwinds that we face and the lack of understanding, I guess, in policy circles
Right.
about the importance of livestock within the overall food system, we're seeing increasingly simplistic solutions from policymakers, particularly because of the issue of climate. People coming out with, statements like, well, if we just got rid of the cow,
Right.
that is just not an option. It doesn't make sense in climate terms, it doesn't make sense in food production terms, and it doesn't make sense in human nutrition terms. So all of these things, they're simplistic, and we as an industry and as a sustainability movement need to challenge those simplistic assumptions.
Very good. Well, I will stop because I could keep asking you questions for a long time. But thank you so much for all the information today, Rory.
Thank you.
This is Sarah Mikesell with the Cattle Site.